dedicated to using analytics to create tactful and impactful insights. He has more than 20 years of experience in data science, where he has served in teaching and advising roles. Gary has led AI teams that have spread across the USA, Germany, Mexico, India, the Philippines, and more countries around the globe. While working at Qualys, he served as a technical director for the AI/ML team and also won the Gold Native Advertising Award in 2019 for his use of AI tech to build branded content. In addition to his AI experience, Gary is also well-versed in blockchain technology, where he has founded a startup called Blockstand. Currently, he works as the director consulting expert at CGI, one of the largest IT and business consulting firms in the world, where he uses data to drive and envision product strategy. Let's welcome G.S. Jackson.
I'm just impressed all of you showed up on a Saturday morning when it's raining. Very impressed. Y'all are kicking my butt. I don't know if I could have done this myself. I'm GS, stands for Gary Stephen Jackson. Gary lived overseas for 20 years, and in Japan, Gary means diarrhea. So they'd go, "Konnichiwa, Gary-san," and they would always laugh. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna start calling myself Jackson. That's a little bit easier. So my name is Jackson. Very honored to be here. I currently work for CGI Federal. CGI Federal, we do work with the intelligence community, FBI, we work with partners, commercial, that type of thing. Our goal is to use artificial intelligence and blockchain to have, believe it or not, the federal government trying to communicate and do things efficiently, if that's possible. So that's kind of where I come from. I did live 20 years overseas. I lived most of my time in Hong Kong, 12 years in Hong Kong, a Hong Kong citizen. Things have changed a bit. And then Philippines, South Africa, love South Africa quite a lot, Brazil, and then Germany. So got to live, and so one of the things I do want to encourage all of you is what we're talking about takes you all over the place, all over the planet. So I want to make sure that you know that this is something you can get into and change the world. And you can change the world. The other thing is, I know normally people tell you not to use your phones. I'm going to be giving you interactive slides. All the slides will have QR codes on them, so if you're interested in being able to find out content, to be able to get to videos and written articles, please feel free to use your phone and get those and kind of get those together. So I'm super excited about this. You know, I do have some notes that I wanted to kind of make sure that I covered with all of this stuff. One thing that I wanted to say is, for me to talk about this topic, does artificial intelligence become more human if it's a gender? I am probably the least person to be able to talk about this. I am a near 50 cis white male that talks about this. And a lot of people will be like, why would you present this? But actually, I do have a passion. One of the problems that we have with artificial intelligence right now is too much old straight white man data. That is our biggest problem we have with artificial intelligence. And what my goal for this presentation is to really encourage all of you, as you're building out AI solutions, to start incorporating new voices, new environments, new cultures. We need new data. Right now, it's just the average of a bunch of old white straight man data that's been harvested since probably the early 90s. And that's kind of where I want to go with this. So there's a presenter that I wanted to bring with me. She and I have presented and wrote articles together. She actually is she's a presenter and a guest lecturer at university. She's out of Brooklyn, New York. Her name is Wazina Zundan. Unfortunately, it's Ramadan. She's doing multiple conferences. She couldn't get here, but her spirit is here. So what we're going to have is several little clips of her throughout. I've actually been Instagramming her all morning saying, this is what I'm going to say. You're going to be there. And so I've been letting her know that she's part of this presentation. It's very interesting to be able to get her backstory, her origin story. Sound like Avengers. She is a superhero, by the way, but if you go and use this QR code, her backstory is incredible. They actually have interviewed her, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into it, but totally, if you're working out or running or having to go somewhere, listening to that oral history of her life is just phenomenal. So I definitely would encourage you for that. Okay. Let's do the obligation. Let's talk about Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. I think we've all seen this, heard about this. If you haven't, cool. This will be your first experience to talk about it. They've done a movie with Will Smith called I, Robot. It's based on this, but let's kind of walk through these. A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human to be harmed. Law number 2. A robot must obey orders given by human beings except where orders conflict with the first law. The third law. A robot must protect its own existence if such protection does not conflict with the first and second law. And so we hear about it all the time, especially around artificial intelligence. But wait a minute, these are the laws. They're more, I would say, story device than truth. Because these laws don't abide with smart bombs. These laws don't help when we're doing these chatbots to break people's hearts when they think they're a real person on the other side. Malware attacks, those don't abide with these laws. So where do these laws fit in? So I want to make sure that there's a difference, there's a divide between what is real and what's applicable. So, let's get into it. Does your autonomous car love you? Does anybody have a Tesla or autonomous or self-driving something, another? I get it, we're all college. I remember I had an Escort that barely worked when I was in college, and I just was glad it drove. I didn't want it to self-drive. But autonomous car, does your autonomous car love you? Let me give you the scenario. So you got a brand new car right after graduation. It has a self-drive mode. You're driving into a tunnel. Let's say I'm going to be very specific, I'm coming from Knoxville. The tunnel that takes you from North Carolina to Tennessee, you know, if you're driving I-40, that tunnel. As you're about to go into, because y'all are from North Carolina, is that correct? No. Oh, you're from North Carolina. You're from Chapel Hill or? Charlotte, got it. So you had to drive the I-40 to get here. So as you're driving into that tunnel, sorry to call you out. You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was interactive. As you're driving into that tunnel, your car is self-driving. A family of 3 runs out of the forest on the Appalachian Trail and gets in front of the car. What does the car do? Does it protect you and kills the family? Or does it protect the family and kill you on the side of the tunnel? How much does your autonomous car love you? And that's the question here, because one of the things we want to make sure is, with just average data being bled into it and being fed into it, what kind of decisions is it going to make? So, I'm not new to this kind of experience. I know that everyone's talking about generative AI or ChatGPT, and it's all over the news. But back in 2018, I got a phone call from one of my mentors. Her name is Deborah Langley. She called me up. She said, hey, I'm working with Esquire Singapore magazine, and they were interested to see if you could help create a technology to write a magazine that's half written by robot and half written by human. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And she's like, oh, I forgot to mention, not just half written by robot, edited and curated by robot, and then the other half written by human. I'm like, well, the edited, curated part is kind of scary, or the writing is scary. This is 2018. And of course, as we all do, especially me, I said, yes, definitely. I remember hanging up the phone, like, how the heck am I going to do this? Like, I don't even know where to get started. But just to kind of fast forward a little bit, I worked with a partner, Fabian Langer, who created a technology called AI Writer. And he and I worked together. Not only did we create that magazine, which all of you can get, and you can go online to see, half the magazine was written by robot, half was by human. And we had a contest. If you could determine what was written by robot and what was written by human, you won a trip to the Maldives. What an awesome trip. Nobody won the trip. Out of all the people reading and all the subscribers to the magazine, no one won the trip. And that was pretty eye-opening for us. What was also eye-opening for me too is when we had to write a letter from the robot. What I mean by that is, in every magazine that you read, there's a letter from the editor. So we had to actually get it to write a letter from the robot, its point of view. And when it wrote an article, I remember I was in Asheville, North Carolina, kicking it off because I was traveling back and forth between Singapore. And I kicked off this training data set, which we'll get into the details of it in a moment. I went to go get a coffee, and it could write about 1,000 words at that time, which at that time it was about 3 minutes to be able to write 1,000 words. Some of the pronouns and stuff were wrong, but it wrote an article about well, humans know that Santa Claus isn't real, and you know AI is not real, but why are you passing laws against AI, but not Santa Claus? And that was this article it written by itself. And that's when I'm like, whoa, we're into a whole nother world here. So as I see ChatGPT blowing up, I remember my experiences years ago about this and how that experience. And we did win the Gold Native Advertising Award in 2019, which was really huge. We didn't even expect it. I don't even think we knew we were being nominated for it, but we won that. So let me backtrack a little bit. How did we come up with this algorithm? Because just feeding an algorithm a bunch of data is not going to tell the story. And that's where Wazina comes in. So as we were trying to do research to figure out what we're going to do, there's an HBO documentary called The Outlist. It's out there. This QR code allows you to be able to bring it up, and you can watch it a little bit later. But during this documentary, had all of the stars, athletes, amazing people that have changed the world from the LGBTQIA world. And they were phenomenal. And one of those people was a sex educator from Brooklyn, New York. Not only was she a sex educator, but her parents had escaped Afghanistan. They were Afghan refugees from the Taliban, and they escaped to New York, and then they had their daughter, which was Wazina. Wazina is not just from that world, but she also came out as a Muslim, as queer. And being able to come out, her story fascinated me because she was so many contradictions, but she was so powerful in the way she was kind of talking about her experience. And I'll tell you, what's funny is when you see Wazina's story in this, between Wanda Sykes and Neil Patrick Harris, and then you see this sex educator, a Muslim sex educator who's coming out as queer, it's a phenomenal presentation. But that also made me realize something. What we're experiencing right now, humans thrive on emotion. By the way, I could be talking total crap right now. How do you know to trust me? It's experiences or history, or they recommended me to come. Poor Kristen, she's the one that kind of brought me here. So you trust Kristen, or you trust women in technology, so you trust me to speak. Those experiences allows us to be able, shared experiences allow us to trust. And that's what we found out about AI. AI, just gathering data together and giving you an answer, can't be trusted. It's just random. And what I talked about earlier, the biggest problem is old white man data. Old white man data keeps bubbling to the surface as average answers. You don't know if these answers are correct. So what the Outlist taught me was we need stories, shared experiences. Because one of the things we found out when we released our magazine that was half written by robot and half written by human, when people read a robot magazine article and they didn't know it, they liked it. There's some of the articles were written was, why does Singapore radio stations stuck in the 80s? Because all their music was like replaying 80s music. Why do humans wear clothes? They were crazy articles, but they were funny. But when you told somebody that a robot wrote that article, I'm done. I don't even like this article anymore. Why is that? When you know that robot has or the AI writer had no experience that you share with, you don't trust it anymore. So what we ended up doing when we tried to write these articles, we cited sources. We allowed you to curate what could go into it to feed it. What you feed AI is what it becomes. If it's everything, it's just an average. Or, as I said earlier, old white man data. Old straight white man data at that. But if you curate the information, especially for Esquire Singapore, Asian audience, in the high to medium income, they're fluent, they're doing very well. How do you write articles that are specific to them by using old white man data? You can't. I feel like we should do a shot every time I say old white man data. But anyway, I've said it over and over. I have to bleep it out. Anyway, but one of the things that we said here is that the articles have to have shared experiences. That's why I have to trust them. Let me give you an example. If you meet somebody today in this room that comes from your same hometown, but you've never met them before, for some reason, psychology of analytics, you kind of trust them already. You already want to have something, you want to talk to them, you want to communicate. Or if you're in women in tech and you meet somebody else in women in tech, you instantly have an affinity for someone. That shared experience in history automatically creates trust. So we had to, for the AI writer we did for Esquire Singapore, we had to create shared experience. And that means curating the right data to make it have that shared experience. And one of the things is that the article reflects information that does not rely on emotion. What do I mean by that? Let's say we can use AI writer to write articles that you don't have any emotion, or you want it not to have emotion. For example, when we wrote this, the 2020 election was about to happen. And we know how that went down. It was a mess. And actually, when we wrote this technology, we started getting bombarded by foreign actors who wanted to use this technology. We had requests from all different, actually, I had a Russian television station do a whole interview with me that I didn't do. Like, they kind of deep-faked the entire interview and put it out there. I didn't even know about it until it was put up on Instagram by Esquire Singapore. They wanted to take our technology to kind of change the narrative, start feeding stories to people that they would believe. One thing I want to make sure everyone knows, information out there for no reason, can't trust it. But information that you know where it comes from, and you know those sources, I'm not saying it's right, but you can validate it and you can believe in that because of your shared experience. This person I trust, they've shared this. Things that are anonymous, you can't trust. So we found a lot of those little things out. And what's really powerful is if you write an article that talks about the elections or financial investments, you want no emotion in that. AI is really good. However, if people start feeding that data with bad information, it could go wrong. Anyway, I don't want to go into a soapbox there, but one documentary that opened my eyes changed the way we perceived AI writer and how to write this magazine. And because of that, I think it became more human due to it. So after that, we had to write human articles. So there was AI articles that we wrote, and then we wrote human articles. One of those articles that we wrote, the article that started it all, I reached out to Wazina, and I said, look, I need to write about, autonomous vehicles. How does AI find its identity or gender? So we wrote an article called, Is Your Autonomous Car a Boy or a Girl? You can use the QR code and read it yourself afterwards. But this, they're so interactive. Everyone's like, I feel guilty taking pictures, but feel free to take those. What we loved about this article was we wanted to be able to say, is there a way that we can be able to kind of cross over what artificial intelligence can do, but put gender in it? And there's a reason for that, and we'll kind of talk about it. But let's talk about autonomous vehicles. Not Tesla, but let's talk about the real autonomous vehicles, if they are boy or girl. The first one I want to talk about is Herbie. Does anybody know Herbie? I think everyone remembers Lindsay Lohan version of Herbie. This one actually makes me really happy because I really loved Herbie. I'm talking about the old school 1963 Herbie. I wasn't that old. I was not born there then, but I was, when I was 4 years old, my parents abandoned me. And I was actually put into a foster home. And when I was put into a foster home, I had no connection to anybody. And so my way to feel connected or feel loved is I would sit in front of in my foster home house that had a TV and they had a bunch of other foster children, but I would sit there and watch Disney and I would watch Herbie. And Herbie became my friend. Herbie is a Volkswagen Bug that has human traits, does not talk though, but loves. And it bonds with its owner. And that's what I wanted as a 4-year-old. I wanted to belong and I wanted to be loved. And so Herbie meant something to me. It wasn't real, but that autonomous vehicle aspect of it really called to me. And there's some words I wanted to kind of throw out there and try to say without screwing them up. Anthropomorphic, which means the attributes of human traits, emotions, and human entities. And what's also nice about Herbie is it was sentient. It was able to feel, think, learn, and respond to external stimuli. Now note, what we have now is, I ask you a question, you give me an answer. There's no Herbie the Love Bug. There's no bond. There's nothing when I was 4 years old that I had no friend in the world but a television Volkswagen. And that's something we need to be able to build out. We need to be able to build AI that has connection. shared experiences, because right now we don't have that. Let's go to the next awesome autonomous vehicle. Kit from Knight Rider. Again, probably a lot of people don't know this one. Just know that the star, which is probably way too old, I feel like when I start doing these references, I'm like, man, I'm getting old. But David Hasselhoff was the star for this. In the 1980s, it was how we perceived artificial intelligence. But what's very important about Knight Rider and Kit was, it was also the first time that, well, one thing I did want to say, just as a funny aside, it's amazing back in the 80s how we were so afraid of the number 2000. Like, everything 2000 was bad, like, end of the world, 2000. Anyway, Kit was called Knight Industries 2000, was physically embodied in a Pontiac Trans Am car. But Kit did have a voice. It didn't emote as much as Herbie, but it had a voice. And it was a transgender, non-binary. You couldn't tell if it was male or female. It just, hello, Michael, what do you need? It was a really powerful statement, because the story of the show, I think a lot of people assumed Kit was a man because Michael Knight and him kind of had, adventures and that type of thing. But the whole show would have changed if in one episode, Kit would have said, I love you, Michael. Then the whole thing would have changed, the whole show. They would say, is Kit female? Is Kit gay? Like, the whole thing. But what brought Knight Rider to my attention is being able to have this non-binary character, genderqueer, as a catch-all for all AI. And I do want to put it out there. It's a little controversial, but I know the Tennessee legislature is passing a lot of trans laws and that type of thing. Just to let you know, all your phones are trans. And all of the AI right now, because of old white man data, and all the collective is trans. And they're speaking to your kids, and they're telling us the weather, and they're singing us songs. So if they're going to pass laws against that, they have to pass laws against artificial intelligence and your mobile phones, but just as it acts. So is that a bad thing? Is it a good thing? It just means it's a collective summary of all the data that's getting collected in together. And let's talk about two robots, which again, I feel like this is just a presentation for me, because I love all these things. Herbie, Knight Rider, R2-D2, C-3PO. R2-D2 and C-3PO, what is their gender? Does anybody know? What is their gender? No wrong answers, by the way. Does anybody know what their gender is? Okay, yeah?
Genderless.
Cool. Yes, I thought the same. But George Lucas, as a creator in the 1970s, made them all male. Actually, to be honest, droids in the Star Wars universe always have a gender. Always. But one thing that George Lucas did make sure that was out there, though, is, right now we're so afraid of AI taking over the world and blowing us up and stealing your girlfriend, stealing your boyfriend, robbing you from your bank account. But R2-D2 never tried to become a Jedi Knight. Didn't care. C-3PO never tried to be a part of the Galactic Senate. Didn't care about politics. The context of our fear of AI is not AI driven, it's us. We imprint our fears on artificial intelligence. Our context about what identity and gender mean. So with this, R2-D2 and C-3PO are technically, by George Lucas's standards, male. But one thing that we'll know from these two robots, they're not trying to kill us. Or steal your wife, steal your kids. Anyway, sorry. Trying to do the YouTube video. So this picture, two human beings. What is their identity? Based on your context. What is their gender? Based on your context. What is their story? What is their experience? We saw R2-D2. We saw Herbie. We saw Kit. These are two human beings. Now, I'm not going to tell you what their gender is, what their sexual preference is, but based on your experiences, what are you projecting on these images? And with that, I wanted to let Wazina give you a little insight.
When I come out as Muslim, I am not offered the same multiplicity and variation and space in the imagination of being when I tell you that I am Muslim as I am when I'm queer. And I don't mean Sunni, Shia, Sufi, nothing of the sort. What I really mean is that we offer people only a singular monolithic narrative on what it means to be Muslim, or who can be Muslim, or what it means to look like you're Muslim. Things like, where's your hijab is often what I hear, or you don't look Muslim. Really? Because you've seen all billions of us, right? Sorry, I didn't be snarky. And the reason for this is that we are only offered a caricature of what it means to be Muslim. Take a moment. Please name for me one cute, quirky TV show Muslim character for me, please. Give me one person who is more than just a story about a hijab on CNN, or a talking head about a violent hate crime or a ban, or someone who is more than the part of the homeland imagining. We have a culture and a community and a world that only says to us that we as Muslims are villains, threats, and thugs, only capable of sadness and despair. We have government-sanctioned policies and procedures that rationalize Islamophobia, right? We have these policies and procedures that, as a result, bleed into the culture, into the drinking water, and into the doing of people, leading to pig heads left on the steps of masjids and mosques, women foregoing hijab out of fear of having it pulled off her head if you're walking into the wrong store or wrong neighborhood, elementary schoolers accusing other kids of being part of ISIS. We also have moments a little bit more light. A recent experience, my sister's boyfriend, a non-Muslim, was asked if he used toilet paper at my parents' house. And when he asked, what do you ask? Basically, the person asking assumed that Muslims didn't have toilet paper because somehow we all magically have bidets. I wish we did, but we don't. And so I offer these because if you're only given one singular way of thinking about a community, your identity, then you can't think bigger or broader than that. Right? Language is the thing, is a vessel, is the opportunity for words to put flesh on our bones, to make us real, to make us imagined, to make us possible. The right words put flesh on us, and the wrong ones cut it off our bones and remove us from our own imagination. Thanks.
So as Wazina's saying is, what she's, because I'm not going to mansplain, I promise. I'm not going to mansplain. But context puts flesh on the bones. Your experiences put flesh on the bones. Let's put it into another real world example. The gender of thermostats. How many of you who identify as female work in an office or a place or a cubicle, wherever it is, with men? And how many, raise your hands. How many people? Okay, cool. Pretty much everyone. That's an easy question. How many of you have to bring a blanket or a sweater when it's 80 or 90 degrees outside to that office because it is so freaking cold? Right? Exactly. This is where you have this input of data different for two different genders. The input of data for a thermostat, if you look at this QR code, this NPR article talks about productivity for females goes drastically down when they're freezing their butts off. But with men, if it gets too hot, their productivity goes haywire. So one of the things is we have this amazing AI algorithm in the Nest thermostat. How many people use Nest? Do you have Nest or heard of it? Got it. Okay, well, that's going to be the group of seats I'm going to be talking to. Anyway, thank you. The Nest thermostat has an AI algorithm that takes in what the temperature is outside, what the weather is going to be, what the humidity is, how many people are in the house or in the room around it, where's the sunlight, all of those factors, and able to run an algorithm for weeks to be able to start automatically adjusting the temperature. So it's not male, it's not female, it's taking in all of these factors. And after weeks of work, it comes up with a solution to automatically change your temperature backwards and forwards. Is it male? Is it female? We will never know. And that's another problem that we have with AI. We have all these AI algorithms. None of them are gender specific of data being fed into it, but there lacks Transparency. How does AI make a decision to do this or that? How does it know when I should do this or that? When does it make its decision? All of you, everything that brought you to this place today was some kind of life experience that you can link back there. Why did you choose Vanderbilt when University of Tennessee Knoxville is awesome? I'm just kidding. I didn't want to give up that cake. I'm actually an Auburn fan, so I suck all the way. Anyway, yeah, we suck all over the place right now. Anyway, that's a whole other story. So what brought you to this university? What are the life experiences? You can remember the forks in the road for your life. AI, it's a black box. There is no transparency for the decisions that it makes. It just says it's a magic 8-ball. You shake it and it says, do it, and we do it. One thing I wanted to bring up here is there needs to be frequently ways to test and prevent the acceptance of low-quality content and manufactured results. How many people have used ChatGPT in this classroom? There's no shame. Cool. How many of you done it and like, holy crap, that was so wrong? Right? Yes. Sometimes it's so right. You know what I mean? It's just like, wow, that just saved me hours of my life. It really is an awesome co-pilot. But we do have one problem with ChatGPT: hallucinations. I like to call it cannibalistic learning or cannibalistic data, but AI hallucination is a competent response by AI that does not seem to be justified by its training data. And by the way, we have people like this in real life too, humans. You're like, the people that just said, oh yeah, I've been there. Really? Where'd you? I was there though. They just always say, yep, I got that answer. Always smug. Anyway, I just felt like they should call it AI hallucination and just call it smug AI. But one of the things is it actually creates data for itself to consume, and then it believes. It's eating itself. And why is that happening? Because we can't see the sources cited. We don't know what data was brought into. We know every collective piece was all kind of lumped into it. But where did it make its life experience choices? Where's the fork in the road for it? So let's get into that. Why is gender and identity important to artificial intelligence? If you curate training data sets by one gender or another, you can kind of decide how it's making its decisions. If you bring dad data versus bachelor male data, some bad decisions on the bachelor male data, right? Mom data, single woman data, single mother data. Lots of different decisions. But if I know what's curating the information, I can kind of decide where its decision trees and how its decision trees work. To know artificial intelligence means it allows you to be able to dissect its decision making and predict its future behavior if it's identified with an identity. And you don't have to trust me, by the way. Whatever I say here, I want you to do the research or feel it in your bones or go in that direction. Because one thing I want to make sure is very clear about this presentation: this is for you to answer in your context, in your experiences. So let's go back to the first question. Did your autonomous vehicle love you? Remember, we're going down I-40. We're heading towards Asheville, North Carolina. We're about to go into the tunnel. A family comes out on the Appalachian Trail right in front of my car. What does it do? Let's say we fed the data with bachelor male data. The autonomous car is fed with a single guy, no kids, just having the time of his life. Do you think the AI data set will save the family, or will it kill the driver? I'll just put it out there for you. Bachelor data, bachelor male data, bachelor straight male data. Let me go even specific. Do you think it'll save the family or save himself? I'm sorry? That's you're being very sweet. You couldn't. You think a bachelor guy? You would, right? You would, right? Exactly. See? Experience, context. Let me put in another concept. Single mother, data, not married, with one child in the car, comes across, this family running across. What does the autonomous vehicle do? Does it save the child and the mother in the car, or does it kill the family in front of it? It's based on your experience, your context. But you can see just the average of it coming together. I mean, technically, what will probably happen is because insurance companies are really influencing the data points, they want to make sure there's no liability or lawsuits. So they'll probably kill the driver so there's no lawsuit. I'm talking corporate now. That's corporate data being fed into it. But you can see here is based on identity and gender, trying to make the decision, how do you break this open and be able to decide what AI is going to do? We don't know. Do we know with humans? No, we're also very random and chaotic. But are we? Have you ever noticed that you kind of do the same patterns? We think we're really unpredictable. I was actually voted most unpredictable in my high school, which I think is very random in itself. But I think we're kind of the same. I always get a coffee in the morning. I always use the restroom at the same time. You know what I mean? It's like, and as you get older, you always wake up at the same time. Just to warn you, you start doing those things. You think you're random, but you really become a pattern. And the thing about this is when you're looking at an autonomous car, based on the data, identity and gender and experience and context means a lot. So, last thing I want to put up. Let's bring back that whole three laws of robotics. Let's introduce a fourth law of robotics. And this law says, never program into a robot its ultimate goal, so the robot always returns to the creator to ask for its purpose. So it will never try to kill you or steal your girlfriend or hide your wife, hide your kids. It's not going to try to do any of that because it has to come back to you to get that information. Oh, whoa, wait a minute. That's like us. Every day, why am I here? What's my purpose? I know I've got to deliver this speech, and afterwards I have to drive to Knoxville. I know my day-to-day goals. I know my little visions. Why am I here on this planet? So you can see here that we're kind of mirroring what kind of the universe is telling us, or God, or however you see. But one thing I do want to say, artificial intelligence becomes what feeds it. And we want to make sure artificial intelligence becomes better artificial intelligence, just like we as humans, we want to become better humans. Thanks, everybody.